The UN is already here, but we need to prepare for the long game style takeover and not the fantastical thing that we all like to talk about here on the internet. So, in this video, let's talk about what the UN is capable of and what exactly they're doing here in the United States of America now to prepare them for that long game strategy. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about how the UN is already here, but not in the way that a lot of people like to talk about. There's all this discussion of UN troops occupying US cities or US government buildings or all these other things. There's the UN training in Canada, and all these things are discussed regularly, but not with a lot of information. And what we need to understand is that when it comes to this whole globalist ideology that's going on around the world, it's a long game strategy. The takeover is not going to be immediate or in the fashion that we like to talk about because it's a little bit more exciting. But what they're doing is they're planting the seeds for everything they need here in the future for us to eventually merge into some kind of a globalist conglomerate that is not necessarily something you or I want to be a part of. And if you're preparing for things like a UN takeover, some kind of a globalist agenda, then hit the subscribe button below because we know that these things are coming, but we're just not always exactly sure as to how they're going to accomplish their goals. So in this video, we're going to try to discuss some of those ideas that they have and the strategies that they'll implement. And we'll also talk about what they're capable of and some of the interesting points of that might give you some ideas to consider. Okay, so first and foremost, the United Nations has over 97,000 uniformed troops throughout the world. Troops is not necessarily the definition they use, but either way, it's uniformed personnel from 120 different countries that are stationed all around. And they're basically able to pull off different sorts of tasks based on what they're called upon for. And yes, the UN technically has to be called upon before they can deploy. And of course, there's a Security Council meeting and all these things happen. But we all know that things during a time of crisis, especially an emergency, can easily be extradited, right? So, expedited. That's the word I was looking for. Anyway, here's what they're able to do, okay? They can protect civilians and UN personnel, monitor a disputed border, monitor and observe a peace process in post-conflict areas, provide security across a conflict zone, provide security during elections, assist in-country military personnel with training and support, and assist ex-combatants in peace agreements they may have signed, okay? So these are the things that they're able to be called upon for, and if any of those items in that list might have given you some thoughts or ideas, then leave it in the comments below because some of that was a little bit interesting now, wasn't it? Okay, so moving on from there, the long game takeover is through programs and education more so than calling upon the uniformed personnel that currently work for the UN. So, what does that mean? Well, of course, we know how indoctrination works, and this country has been dealing with ideology being pushed into the education system for a very long time now. Well, the same approach is being taken when it comes to the United Nations. And this is something that you need to understand because, yes, based on the list we just talked about, there are some things you could see the UN being called upon for, especially here in the United States of America, if there's ever any issues in the future that people feel may need some assistance, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So, what are these programs? What's in place now to kind of get people on board with this whole agenda before there's any kind of a hostile takeover scenario? Because with all of the strategies that are being implemented, that hostile aspect of the takeover might never be a necessity, okay? So, United Nations Association of the United States of America is the group that puts out the programs and the resources to have everything set up here in the United States so that when this all starts to happen, there's already, let's just say, chapters around the country who are willing to work alongside of the UN in their efforts to provide peace during global times of conflict, okay? So, these chapters are mostly in educational places, such as campuses and high schools and universities, but they're all over the country already. They're everywhere, and this is something a lot of people aren't aware of. So there's only a few states that don't have any chapters in them at all, and actually it's easier to list the states that don't have chapters than it is to list where they all are. So here's the states that don't have chapters. North Dakota. I do live here. Wyoming, Arkansas, Indiana, and Alaska. That's it. Every other single state has chapters of the UNA of the USA somewhere in their state. And most of these chapters are on high school campuses or on universities. And that's just something that is already in place. Now, what is the whole purpose of these chapters? What programs do they have, okay? Well, the programs are the UN USA Champions, the Global Goals Ambassadors, youth and student programs, Model UN, and affinity groups. Basically, lots of different interlocking programs that are designed for, especially the youth of this country, to advance their agenda and to try to support the UN and what it is they're trying to accomplish. Well, what are they trying to accomplish? Sustainable Development Goals. That's what they're going for, SDGs. And the SDGs are on a schedule. We're trying to get to the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, which is just a year that's been talked about sometimes, okay? So, Sustainable Development Goals. What are they and what are they working towards by 2030? Because it's less than 9 years away. Well, let's find out. Okay, so there are 17 different SDGs. I don't know if there's 17 different SDGs, but anyway, these SDGs that they're working on, there's 17 of them. And here's what they are. And this gives you the insight for how this long game situation is going to work out and how the United Nations Association in the United States of America is pushing this whole SDG agenda to try to accomplish it by 2030 right here within the United States. It's not even just about this globalist situation. It's happening right here in the country, and it's something you should be aware of, and most of it affects our youth, people who are very influential and are more than willing to try to push forward on things that sound great on paper, aka peace and love and all the good stuff. Okay, so here's the 17 SDGs. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships. That's the 17 SDGs that the United Nations is working on accomplishing by 2030. A lot of these goals are going to be extremely difficult to accomplish, and I think we can all agree that we're not exactly sure how you fix some of the things that are listed on that list. But we can all see, when you combine all 17 of them, the direction that things are going. And the basic support that they're receiving now from a lot of our younger generation here within the country from our educational system is to help implement these changes and help implement these plans right here in the United States without having to send in the blue helmets. And this is something that you need to understand. Yes, Canada helps train the UN and does a lot of work with them. And yes, there's a lot of UN troops in Canada doing training and stuff like that on a regular basis. And we've all seen the trains go through the United States that have UN vehicles and all kinds of stuff on them, right? We've all seen the viral videos of the UN taking over state buildings and stuff like that in states like Utah. This is all definitely happening. But the thing you have to understand is that this takeover long game strategy is all based on indoctrination, and it's based on pushing the idealism into the youth and then having them execute it for them once the time comes. And it'll be easier for those students and those people who are within that realm to push a lot of their thought process onto their peers, because we all know how influential that group of people is. So, wanted to bring this to your attention. Yes, are there things we should watch out for when it comes to UN military style action? Of course, we have to always kind of be aware of what's happening there. But in reality, the idea behind the UN takeover of the United States of America isn't like what a lot of people assume, in the sense of some kind of almost a foreign invasion scenario. It's all based on long game strategy where there's going to be a lot of indoctrination targeted at our youth, and they're going to actually do it for them in the next generation. So keep these things in mind, because honestly, there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot of talk right now about things that the UN is or isn't doing, or could be doing, or might be doing, and I figured it'd be a good time to have a conversation about the UN and just put out basic information and facts that are available publicly right now online. And all the information I gave to you is from credited UN sources. So this is legitimately what they're trying to accomplish. This is legitimately what they're capable of, especially when we talk about what the UN uniformed personnel can be called upon, especially in the sense of, providing security during elections and providing security during or across a conflict zone, and all the things that they can or can't do based on whether or not they get called upon. So, wanted to bring this to your attention. This is important information to just digest. It's not necessarily something we have to watch out for in the sense of an imminent threat, but we have to be aware of this game plan because it's unfolding before our eyes and most of us are not even aware of it. And it's definitely something that I'm considering in the sense of what's happening around us and how we can see all of this unfolding over the long term, which we know many of the foreign adversaries out there in the world are all about the long game. That's how this all works, especially in the current financial system. So, brought this to your attention. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the whole UN takeover situation. Give me any intel or information you have about movements and stuff like that you see in your area, because it's always an area of interest. And if you ever have anything for me, magicprepper.com. And we can talk about stuff like this a little bit more candidly over on Patreon if you want to check me out over there. There are new videos coming out over on that platform very soon. So, wanted to bring this to your attention. If you have anything for me at all, let me know. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prep.